Welcome everybody to the monthly Baylor Law LLM and Litigation Management webinar. Today the topic is going to be about putting litigation management to work as corporate counsel. And we're privileged for the panel today that we have three graduates of the Baylor Law LLM program. And I'm going to go ahead and do a brief introduction before we get in so that you can have an idea and appreciation for who our panelists are. First, Jennifer Castillo. Jennifer is the senior attorney and manager at OGE Energy Corp. She manages all litigation and claims for OGE Energy Corp and its affiliate, Oklahoma Gas and Electric Company. She graduated from Cameron University and also from the University of Oklahoma with two different masters, with a bachelor's and then a master's. Got her law degree from Oklahoma City University School of Law, and then her Baylor Law LLM and Litigation Management. Emily Knott is senior counsel for John Deere & Co. Always call them John Deere, the green tractors. And she is responsible for mitigating risk to enable, and I like this, innovative business solutions. She's also in prior roles managed disputes through arbitration and trial, including product liability, contract, warranty, and others. She got her undergraduate degree from Davidson University and her law degree from Indiana University School of Law. Erin Snyder, Emily also is a graduate of the LLM program, and Erin Snyder is the Vice President and Managing Counsel for Litigations and Investigations for Atrium Health, one of the nation's largest healthcare organizations, a nonprofit healthcare system. She is in charge of and responsible for coordinating the strategy, budgeting, and management of all litigation matters, government investigations, and their own internal investigations. She graduated from Northwestern and also got her law degree from UNC Chapel Hill. So that's the introduction, and these are very qualified people, and they do manage litigation. And so the first question that I have really it's sort of twofold, folks. And look, I'm going to encourage you to talk as part of this webinar so that they don't have to listen to me all the time. But it's really a two-part question, and that is, look, we've read things that suggest that corporate counsel face increasing pressures to have litigation spend to be more predictable, to manage litigation better, to do a better job in terms of controlling the legal spend. And so the question is, what kind of pressures did you face as part of the environment where you work? And then secondly is, okay, well, what did or what led you to pursue getting further education in the area of better managing litigation in light of those pressures? So I'm going to open it up and I'm going to let one of you say whatever you want to say. Go ahead. Whoever wants to go.
Okay, I'm off mute, so I can start us out. Certainly, as all in-house counsel do, I've faced budgeting pressures. But I think one of the other things that as litigation counsel is a challenge for some of us is really kind of demonstrating our value to our business colleagues. We can't always control the outcome of litigation, but we can certainly control things beyond just spend. And having some control over your processes and your people and all of that was something that was of interest to me beyond just the pressure to control spend. So my current role, I manage our e-discovery group and our litigation paralegals. So I wanted to, pick up more project management, process improvement, data analytics type operational skills that are kind of hard to pick up. You certainly don't get taught that in law school. And I didn't think an MBA was really the route I wanted to go. So that was really kind of what brought me to the Baylor program, was to learn better ways to demonstrate my value and the value that the folks in our law department bring to our business colleagues. And then, of course, to help work on spend control, resource control, all of the things that get emphasized to us in-house.
Good.
I would next, very similarly to Emily, being in-house, there's always lots of focus and pressure on keeping your budget, keeping your spend below budget, and then especially going through COVID and having the economy hit hard, which affected certainly the industry that my company is in. But additionally, after having been in-house for 15 years and moving to an in-house role, I realized after a year or two that I wanted and I needed some project management skills that I was seeing in the corporate world that I did not see in private practice. And looking for ways and tips and best practices to create efficiencies, to make sure that we're hitting budget, that our budgets are realistic. And so I was really just Googling for CLE or books and materials and found the Baylor program, found some information and thought, oh, great, I can get this information that and this training and this skill set that I'm looking to get, and I get an LLM on top of it. So that was just the icing on the cake, was it being an LLM program from Baylor.
Good.
I'll say quickly, the pressure that I faced is that I got a job as a litigation manager and had no litigation experience. I'd been in-house counsel for 14 years and had solved problems for the company, but I am not a litigator by training. And I realized pretty quickly that as my company was going to grow, employ more people, open more facilities to provide healthcare services, that I needed to be ready for that. And we also were looking to reduce spend as we were growing. I was fortunate that my boss gave me a chance to take on this role. It was a series of circumstances where folks had left the company and he promoted me to this role. And so I was really glad when I saw the LinkedIn ad for the Baylor LLM.
Emily mentioned it and you each said something about it. There is this idea that in the corporate world that and a need to deliver value to your client, which in the word value can be a sort of a nebulous concept. What does value mean to the corporate world? And so in the pressures that you faced in trying to deal with the value, Emily, I'm going to start with you because you answered first, but what do you think delivering value is from the corporate counsel perspective? What does that look like?
Well, the favorite lawyer response, that depends. It depends on the matter and my internal client and a lot of other factors. And, that was one of the kind of interesting things that we spent quite a bit of time on or talked about during the LLM was defining what that means as relates to a particular lawsuit or an internal client, and doing that at the beginning of a matter so that everyone's sort of rowing the boat in the same direction. So we certainly have some matters where value is winning. It is a really important thing for our company and we're willing to spend more. And, the only thing we want is ethically, of course, to have the matter resolved favorably. There's other instances where value means getting out below a certain amount, where it means getting out without, exposing certain executives to being deposed. It could mean, avoiding certain jurisdictions. Value could be different for every single matter. So I think that was really important point that discussed a lot with colleagues was how do you define that? And then for me, one of the things that I spent a lot of time working on this program was then how do you share that internally, right? So how do I establish metrics around my performance that I can share upwards to show that I am bringing that value, whether that be value for me could be process improvement. It could be creating libraries and templates and things that other people can use to make their job easier. It could be a variety of different things, but kind of on the front end, establishing what that value is for that particular matter, or for me, that particular internal client, and then being able to write kind of goals, as we all have internally, performance management type goals, but metrics around those goals that I can record my performance against and that are within my control, because that's the challenging thing with measuring your value internally when you're managing litigation is how do I evaluate my performance based on things I have control over? So those could be spend reduction type goals. They could be process improvement type goals, but that really what's valuable in a particular situation is going to be situationally dependent.
Right.
I can say at my company, the opposite of value is being a cost center, right? And that's how we're viewed. And helping our finance team understand that they have, some in our finance team have the perception that the more lawyers you hire, the more legal expenses you're going to have to pay. And you have to show them, actually, that's the opposite. You have to provide, the same amount of legal services at a lower cost or the same cost as last year. Better if you can be reducing your costs as time goes forward. That's one way that we try to show value. I had an executive one time tell me when I said, well, but there are things that we can't control. And she said, Erin, we can't control at our hospitals how many patients come in. We can't control if there's a pandemic. We can't know, when we set up our air ambulance program with the helicopters, where the patients are going to come from. If we can, meet financial goals despite all those uncertainties, so can the legal department. That was my early education in showing value at my company.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Emily and Erin said. It's going to depend, but I wanted to mention one specific thing that I think has allowed this program to learn to bring additional value to my company is that having come from the law firm world, moving into the corporate world and not having project management knowledge or knowing the lingo, it's enabled me to communicate with a lot of our business unit leaders in a deeper way. And I'm able to come to them when a lawsuit's filed or when we anticipate that there's litigation coming. Because of the things that I learned and I've been able to practice, I can have an initial conversation with them on a much deeper and greater level that enables us to, so far, we've seen this, been able to determine what resources to assign to a particular matter much earlier on, to develop a strategy much earlier on, and like you said, to determine with that particular business unit and leadership, what is a win for this particular matter. And as Emily referred to, it's not necessarily going to be that we win the lawsuit every time. Sometimes it's going to be, let's get this settled quietly and early on and move forward.
I'm going to add, you all have heard from me, right? You've had classes with me, but, one of the things that always troubled me was that many times the lawyers that you retain just immediately start to work on whatever the matter is that's referred to them. It's just an immediate process. I'm going to go start working on it because I know really what to do. And there wasn't a time period where people would step aside and say, okay, what does success for this matter or these matters really look like? What is a win, not from Kyle's perspective, but what's the win from the corporate client's perspective? What does it look like? How are they defining success? Because then that can set the table for how it is that you're going to address that particular litigation. So I want to move into, just thinking about this delivering of value and to reducing the overall legal spend, making it more predictable with some tools that we've talked about and you've sort of already mentioned, and that would be assessing risk very early through a really good early case assessment process. That's one area I want to visit about. How are you using sort of this early case assessment to help you define what a win looks like and help you in the remainder of the handling of that particular litigation? So I'll leave it open and let one of you respond.
I'll jump in first this time. One of the earliest things that I was able to implement that I learned from the program was developing what I call my early case assessment checklist specifically for property damage claims. Being an electric service utility, and we have people going out and repairing, setting new poles, and damage happens. And so we get a number of those claims, and it always felt like there should be a better way to handle those. And so one of the tools is I created for the course and then implemented here, a checklist that is accessible as a Word document. We set a new one up for each new property claim matter, whether it's a lawsuit or a claim. I provide access to our other in-house legal team members and to myself. And as we go through the process of examining what we have, going through and talking to people, we're going in and we're maybe not in great detail, but we're making notes in that checklist. So I think a couple of things are happening. It's focusing us early on, do we have all of the pieces, right? Have I considered what the claimants are going to argue in addition to what my employees and contractors are telling me about a particular instance? Additionally, forcing us to have those conversations to track down the documents earlier rather than later, which again, more information early on is better. And I suffered from what I think a lot of litigators suffer from, and you just referenced, we get a case and you just jump in and you just start. So that early case assessment planning, especially with that checklist, has been helpful. I also find that, and I haven't been able to do just as much as I wanted to, but the idea of doing limited or do-it-yourself focus group testing just fascinates me. To use that as a tool to get early information, for example, again, being employed by an electric utility service provider, if I get a particular case, well, what is the public's perception of what the utility's responsibilities are in a particular matter? Or how is a particular communication or witness going to be viewed? And so doing those kinds of things early gets that additional information, especially from those people that are coming from your potential jury pool. I think has also been incredibly valuable and alerted us, the limited amount I've been able to use it so far, alerted us to issues that did allow us to pivot early and resolve the case, as opposed to waiting until trial and seeing how that worked out.
Yeah, Jennifer, with your mention of the sort of the focus groups, one of the things that I hear from time to time is that focus groups are just you're just adding cost. Have you found that you can do these focus groups inexpensively? Yes. And is the value that you get from them beneficial to you and your client?
Yes. So you can find vendors that will charge you an arm and a leg to do these focus groups, but there are other vendors out there who will work with you to develop a limited focus group session, a half a day on one particular question of fact, as opposed to a whole case. There's literature out there about doing it yourself, and if you do it carefully, you can do it in a very, very cost-effective way by using colleagues, outside counsel, other friends to act as the presenting attorney. So I think there's a variety of ways if you're willing to be creative, and also if you're willing to realize that the information you get back from that focus group is it's one piece. It's not going to be necessarily determinative of the value of a case, but it can help reveal some of those inherent problems that for me as in-house counsel, certainly, I tend to get very easily wrapped up in our story. I'm very passionate about representing my client. And so there are ways to do that. And I would encourage people that are interested. There are some articles online But as well, I'm happy to talk to anybody about that if they wanted to reach out to me via LinkedIn.
One last thing on that, and that is I've noticed, and y'all obviously know because I think you heard from Karen Lisco. I mean, there are some firms that are employing within the firm itself people that can do that kind of an assessment, focus group assessments, which can be beneficial to the clients. So go ahead, Aaron. I'm going to turn it over to you then I'll go Emily last since she went first the first time. So.
You know, what was mind-blowing for me about early case assessment was using it. I had heard many outside counsel say, "Oh, there's no way to know the value of the case right now because we have to review 5,000 emails first, right?" And after doing the program, I was able to go back and say, "Wait, really? Really, based on the cases that you've handled before, I understand there may be some unknowns out there, but can we talk about what would be known? Like, what is our plan? What's the corporate objective? And then can we estimate time, schedule, cost?" And it was the outside counsel who were willing to engage in that dialogue who showed me their value. And so by implementing that and the decision tree analysis too, Kyle, that we went through in the program gave me a tool to show my business people how we were making the decisions we were making. And it wasn't just a 20-page memo with a bunch of footnotes in it, right? I was like, here is how we made this decision. And so we went, I think, from being reactive and having cases on autopilot to trying to be as proactive as possible. I can't tell you that it's always perfect. We're busy, things get crazy, but that was the shift that I felt like I was able to bring after the program.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the corporate world. There's an understanding of decision trees. I mean, people use it in their everyday practice, and yet many times as lawyers, we don't use that very valuable tool to really assess sort of the probabilities of a variety of different things happening that can guide the decisions that you have on a moving forward basis. So you found that to be helpful, the decision tree.
I did. As lawyers, we often don't communicate very well or concisely. And if you're in-house counsel, you learn pretty early on that you've got to change that because nobody is going to read the 20-page memo that outside counsel sends you. You may, right? Because you want to understand the nuance. But if you can't take litigation and reflect it as business strategy, return on investment, then your business people they're not going to hear you. They're not going to understand.
How many times have you gotten something from your outside counsel that says, "Oh, you know what? I think there's about a 50% chance that we're going to win this case. And if we don't win it, I suspect that the damages could be, X dollars or in the range of X dollars." Is that meaningful to you, or do you need something a little bit better or more specific?
Oh, no, I've said, sorry, Emily, I'll just say, when people say that to me, my boss taught me to say, if you're going to tell me it's 50-50, I don't need a lawyer, I need a quarter.
Yeah, I need to flip a coin. Yeah, good.
Right.
Right,
yeah. As Aaron said or suggested, the people that we respond to or report to are going to ask us what the chances of success are, how much it's going to cost, and what a verdict range is. And we have to be able to provide that information. So if we then turn around and ask our outside counsel for that information and they hedge and don't want to provide it, then I need to find another outside counsel. So, that's a frustration point, I think, for a lot of in-house counsel. If you are outside counsel and I ask for a chance of success or a verdict, it's not because I'm going to hold you to it. And if you don't meet that, then we're never going to work together again. It's because I'm being asked that question and I have my own answer that I'm going to give, but I want to make sure we're aligned and, not going to come back 60 days later and realize we were on different paths. So one of the things that I implemented was an evaluation within the first 90 days of a case. So it doesn't have to be the first week, but before we get too far down the road. And to Erin's point about concise speaking, I very much appreciate conciseness. So I went to the extreme and put my evaluation form in Excel, which doesn't allow people to use that many words, or it becomes, unreadable. And it includes like 6 questions, and it's very short. And the whole point of it is to make sure that outside counsel and in-house counsel are aligned as to kind of what is the value of this case. Is this a good case or a bad case? I ask for strengths and weaknesses, and I want strengths, witnesses, documents. I don't need details. We've already probably talked about that. So something like that, because we've had cases where we get, 8-9 months into it, and our outside counsel is like, okay, we should settle this for $1 million. And I'm like, well, we've been discussing how this is a good case this whole time. How did we get there? So trying to push that to the beginning, but forcing very kind of concise, high-level discussions at the beginning, because it's certainly not my goal to, hold someone to a half-baked opinion. It's just to make sure that we share the same half-baked opinion at that point. The other thing that I would say is, in addition to early case assessment tools that, I've used externally, it's also helped me to do my own, to provide those kind of tools or information to my internal clients. So because I run our e-discovery program, a lot of times, the costs that come out of our group, which are sometimes not insubstantial, seem mysterious and questionable and whatnot. So what I've also done is create early case assessments going the other way. So do I anticipate that the spend will be from our group based on numbers of custodians, volumes of data, where the review is going to be done, things like that, so that I can provide that to the case team at the beginning. They can include that in their report up, and it's not just, oh, there's another large invoice from this group. So it's kind of helped me communicate both ways, I would say, kind of using those different tools.
We talked a little bit about the early case assessment, and I appreciate your answers, but one of the other things that I want to get your sort of take on is the use of, or treating litigation as a project and using sort of project management techniques and tools. One of the things that I talk a lot about is the idea of understanding the resources and the cost of those resources and the time commitment of those resources, whether you're billing on an hourly basis or you're billing on some alternative means. How does using the sort of the project management approach to managing litigation help in effectiveness and efficiency, if it does? And are you using it more now than you did in the past? So I'm going to throw that open and let whoever wants to answer.
I'll go ahead, Jennifer. Kyle, one thing that I learned from the project management section, where we talked about process improvement, right, in connection with project management, was I wasn't thinking about how are we improving case by case by case. And part of that coursework that we did, there was this is just one example, but a debrief at the end of the case. You sit down with your outside counsel, you sit down with in-house, your inside lawyers, and you talk about the case itself and then the company. And I made myself do it recently because I really just want to move on. The case is over. We settled. It's really hard to devote time to that. But I was like, okay, I went to the program. I'm going to do this. And we were able to identify, without getting into too much specific, a real risk for the company that wasn't being mitigated. And we realized that we needed to put some training into place to correct it. And it was a multi-million-dollar risk that I feel like we were able to mitigate. And it came from the debrief process.
Good.
I'll jump in. I think for me, it's very similar to Aaron yet again. But some of it too, I think, is going to this idea that was very new to me, that you could manage litigation much like a project. And so the idea that there were processes that could be employed was intriguing to me, putting them into place. But the debriefing has been something that I recently forced myself to do after the program. And as much as I felt impatient taking the time and sitting down to do it, we found that there are ways we could handle this particular kind of matter better going forward. So just that idea that there is improvement, that there is a process that can improve, I think for me has been mind-blowing and continues to be exciting, that there's a new way to do this, new in quotes.
Yeah, agreed. The debriefing not only helps, like Aaron suggested, identify what may be company issues, not litigation issues, but things that came up in the course of litigation that you need to circle back and deal with the underlying issue. And then also just, outside counsel, in-house counsel, expert relationships, and maybe things that went misunderstood that I think is obvious and the other party doesn't, or, I didn't understand why this portion was handled by this person, have all been really helpful feedback to help us improve the next time we handle similar litigation. The project management side for me was very exciting. I'm like that person who in December gets their planner for the next year and puts all the dates in. So I love any ability to manage time and resources better. So I really enjoyed the information that was provided in the LLM on legal project management, and have definitely referred back to that, my notes and whatnot from that class several times. But one thing that we've done recently on a larger case is set up, a lot of you I'm sure have Microsoft Teams as Microsoft as your kind of default technology at work, and may use Teams. We use Teams substantially. And we were able to set up a team on Teams with internal and external folks, just attorneys to keep it privileged, but to share information, to share resources in real time. So we have a shared calendar, we have, all of the pleadings and whatnot. So previously where you might have, I have my docket, I have all my information on a server, outside counsel has all their information in a document management system. This allows us to have one place where all of us are working collaboratively on things. And as soon as, let's say for the e-discovery side, our group has completed collections and transferred data and whatnot, we just update a chart on there, as opposed to, a year ago where I was spending hours on the phone with outside counsel going through what the status of all these work tasks were. So there's been things like that have been very useful in terms of day-to-day management and making the way that we're working with our outside counsel more efficient.
Good. We in the project management, you talk about what does the scope of this project look like? What does the plan look like? And the plan includes the resources that are going to be used to accomplish the strategy, which is made up of a bunch of different tasks. And then there is the monitoring of it and the execution of it, and then the after action review. One question that I have is that in this sort of planning process, have you been able to see ways to better save money from a budgeting standpoint, or through taking a better look at the resources that are being applied by your outside counsel? Have you been able to look at it and say, you know what, there's probably a better way. Maybe we don't need 5 or 6 different people doing this. Maybe we ought to be doing this in our plan. Have you been able to think about that kind of thought process in the planning of projects?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's helpful is seems very obvious, but we're all in a hurry. We don't always do it. Is clarifying roles and responsibilities and who is going to do what, and who should leave what alone because it's already being handled by someone else. We had situations where we had outside counsel kind of doing research on stuff that, like, we have engineers who that's their entire job. Like, why are you trying to figure that out on your own? And shame on me that I didn't tell you that I had this resource and you're out there doing this on your own. So having that, taking the time at the beginning when we're all really busy and don't want to do it, to sit down and do that planning and clarify who's going to be responsible for what has definitely saved us money, saved us headache, all of that.
Good.
Yeah, it's definitely helped me reduce costs just from the perspective of having those conversations early, even with outside counsel that I've been working with for a number of years, but talking and planning early and having the conversation, do we really need the senior partner to be doing this work? Can we have a lower level partner or a senior associate, but it's provided the framework, I guess, to enable those conversations, and they've been beneficial. And again, they've led to reduced costs because we're not just throwing the whole team on every item, every task.
Good. Follow up on that, and that is that, look, from the corporate counsel perspective in managing litigation, my guess is that your single biggest cost is the cost of your outside counsel. That would be my guess. And so how are you addressing the issue of, cost control, cost management with your outside counsel beyond what you've already said? And what kind of resistance have you gotten, if any? And if you have advice for outside counsel, how to better approach that issue of managing the costs? I know that's like 3 different questions all in one, but I figured I'd get them all out there.
Sure, I'll jump in. I have had outside counsel that have been resistant to the idea. But for the most part, once we've sat down and I've explained that this isn't me trying to prevent you from making a living. This isn't me trying to not give you the business. This is me trying to create a win-win situation, both for the firm and the lawyers on the outside, as well as me and the company. And a win-win situation is you are able to get to the goal that this particular case warrants. We do it within budget. So we get the result that we want. We get the cost that we're pushed to save, which then in turn enables me to hire them for the next case, because I know that they're going to be responsive and they're going to pay attention to things with respect to budget.
I agree that outside counsel expense is high, and I'd say right alongside that is the cost of e-discovery and e-discovery vendors and managing documents. And when I started this program, I was able to work with one of the professors on one of my goals, which was implementing a software e-discovery system for our company, which was tied to my bonus. So that was pretty important. It was really great to get that help. But, and going back to your question, Kyle, about, costs and resistance from outside counsel, we're already saving money and documenting the return on our investment from the software, because it used to be that we would scramble to get documents and we'd send them out to the firms, and each of them had their own e-discovery platform. And so I'm sending documents hither and yon, right? Multiple places, which is escalating my risk. And I'm paying a hosting fee on top of whatever I'm paying the firm to go through the documents. We were able to switch that so that now we have a centralized e-discovery database that outside counsel come in to access, right? That's done with my IT security team's protocols in place. And so I've saved money on hosting fees. and I've centralized the data so I don't have it everywhere and at increased risk. It's sitting on all these different law firm hosting sites.
I would say in terms of spend pressure, for us, we do have spend reduction goals, and I do meet quarterly with our GC on occasion and that's on occasion one of the topics of those meetings. So it certainly is something that's on the radar, and as far as how do we handle that or how do we meet those goals. Some, in some areas we've pushed towards flat fees for things that we have repeat litigation for, or charges or things that are smaller usually and predictable. Nothing's 100% predictable, so everyone understands. Sometimes I'm going to get a great deal, sometimes I'm going to get a terrible deal, and I'm fine with that because I don't have to review bills as part of it. But we look at whether we can insource things. So similar to Aaron's discussion of insourcing e-discovery, obviously we did that here a number of years ago. But are there things that our outside counsel is doing that we can do instead? Obviously there's resource constraints for us. I can't go get licensed in 50 states and take everyone's depositions, but if there's stuff in Illinois and I can just go to the mediation myself without hiring outside counsel, maybe I'm going to do that. So it could be a variety of different ways, I guess, that we're addressing them, but we are tracking them on a, monthly, quarterly, et cetera, cadence. And, so we do know if we have, and we track it by firm too. So if your firm is substantially higher spend than other firms who are doing similar work, that's going to come out pretty quickly and will result in some discussions about how work can be moved within your firm to people who have lower billing rates. So, we know that if we have someone who's a second year associate taking a deposition, maybe that's not going to be as good as a named partner taking a deposition, but maybe I don't care for this case because it's a low risk case, or I want that associate to get some experience so that they're ready to take on larger cases. So, having those discussions with our outside counsel about what our goals are for particular cases and discussing the staffing specifically for individual cases has also helped make sure that we're getting the right service on the right case and can show that we're addressing our cost goals.
It's interesting, you mentioned that, there are a number of different services out there now that will enable you, programs that will enable you to compare across firms what people are spending, what people are spending to do a summary judgment. Firm A is spending this and firm B is spending this on a similar summary judgment. Well, do you find that kind of a tool that you mentioned, is it helpful to you in being able to have discussions with outside counsel?
Yeah, we have, we use task-based billing like most folks with litigation, the ABA task codes. And we can export our billing data into Excel or Tableau or Power BI, whatever tools your particular organization has, and look at it on a firm by firm basis, a case by case basis, by the type of the case, by the portion of the case. So, what was associated with depositions or things like that. And of course, those numbers are not the only source of information, because you can't compare a very complex motion for summary judgment to a very short one. Obviously, you have to take those things into consideration. But when we have discussions with outside counsel about billing, and I can say, your bills for the same thing are on average 40% higher than the three other firms providing the same services, they can't really argue that, the data is what the data is. So we have to just take that and make a plan for how are we going to get you back down to closer to where your market is Or maybe we just decide, hey, your higher rates have also resulted in better results, and I'm just going to hire you for bet the company types of litigation, and you're not going to get the rest of our work. And maybe that's great for both of us, because that you don't want to do our smaller cases and I don't want to pay you to do our small, so just having those discussions with that data in front of you is very helpful.
Cool.
I wanted to echo that. If you don't have e-billing tools with data analytics, get them, and it will totally change your conversations with outside counsel. And the next time they're saying, oh, well, the market is that associates are getting a 5% increase in their hourly rates this year, you'll be able to go back and say, actually, I've got X thousand timekeepers and the average increase was 2%, right? It's really powerful.
Yeah, but Jennifer mentioned this idea of win-win. And I think y'all may have heard that a few times, at least going through the program. And in some respects, do you think that really means that your outside counsel need to look at it from the perspective of, well, who am I using to do this kind of work? Do I need the highest level associate? Do I need, a junior partner? And do a better job of assessing who's going to be actually doing the work. Because if they have an appreciation for the cost of the people that are doing the work, as you've heard me say, then they can better manage your litigation because they know the cost of the people that are doing the work. And they know who may be the right people to do that work for you at a cost that is beneficial to you and at a cost that's beneficial to the firm. Has that kind of thought process been helpful to you?
Most definitely. And again, I think it's enabled us, having those conversations has enabled us to not only control costs and reduce our costs for cases, but I also like that having those conversations early, we can discuss things like, well, there is this associate and, it would be great for her development, her progress, or his development and progress to be able to take this deposition or argue this particular motion. And so I like that it gives both of those benefits, both the financial side, ideally for both parties, that we're reaching an agreement with respect to the fees that are going to be reasonable to me, but yet compensate them for their work, but also that we're helping growth of future lawyers.
Good.
Yes. Amen, Jennifer. I'm kind of surprised by how rarely outside counsel comes to us with that request, because we have, generally our practice is to maintain decades long relationships with our outside counsel. We have trial counsel that we've used for 25 years. And part of that expectation of that relationship is that they're training up the next generation who are going to be here when I'm gone, trial counsel's gone. There's still going to be someone who has familiarity with our company and is prepared to defend us well. And there's multiple times where I've said, well, how about we let so-and-so do this task or take this deposition or argue this motion, because I want to know that person, first of all, is getting good work and is going to stay at this firm, and that they're going to have that experience when the partner retires. I'm going to have someone who's been to court before who can handle my work, and I'm not going to have to go do an RFI and find new counsel and all of that. So that's a big focus, I think, for a lot of larger corporations, is succession planning with outside counsel, and having those conversations at the front side of the case to understand maybe we look at this as a low risk case. So I've had cases that I think are low risk, and there's an associate who I think is especially good. I've just told the firm, I want so-and-so to handle this case all by him or herself. You guys, if you feel from a malpractice perspective that you need to provide some oversight, you're welcome to do that, but I'm not going to pay for it. Sorry, in that particular instance. But, we need to make sure that these people are getting as much experience as possible. And if you as an outside counsel bring that to your in-house counsel, I think that would be much appreciated.
going to transition because we got just a few minutes left, and I'm going to transition with a question that's been asked. And I know the answer, but I'm going to go ahead and let you each answer it along with a question that I'm going to follow up with. Okay. During your time in the Baylor LLM program, did you stay with your one employer, or did you use it in conjunction with a job transition? That's the question. And so each of you can answer that. Did you stay with your employer while you were in the program, or did you use it for a transition?
I stayed with my employer, and it was part of a transition of my role for the employer.
Yeah.
I'm still with my employer. This was just me wanting to become a better lawyer, a better in-house counsel, and provide those benefits to the company.
I also stayed with my employer. I did end up changing roles, right kind of at the end of the program. So I think a lot of what I learned in the program was helpful for that. I mean, I think in the back of my mind when I was signing up for this, part of it also was, if there's a day down the road that I need to part ways for some reason with my employer, that this would put me in a better position or make me seem like a better candidate for other potential roles.
Emily, I thought the same thing. And I thought also it could allow me to move from industry to industry where I didn't need to, right? Because I could take the litigation management skill set outside of healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Last question, last sort of topic, and just so everybody knows that the CLE number has been put into the chat box. I just saw that go in there for this time that we spent together. The last question is really about relationships, and one of the things that I think helps from a corporate counsel perspective is having the ability to be in a room with people that are even on the opposite side of the docket, or people that are outside counsel, being in a room with other inside counsel to share knowledge and experience. And so there's a relationship aspect to learning about litigation management that I'd ask for each of you to speak to. What does that relationship aspect look like to you for, getting the degree in litigation management and then using it where you are? So open it up.
So one of the first things in this, there are multiple things that this program brought me, but, in addition to just the friendships that I think are going to be lifelong friendships, having the ability to talk to face-to-face people that are facing the same things I am in different corporations. How have they handled it? What have they done? Additionally, having plaintiffs' lawyers and outside counsel in some of our classes and discussions has also helped me view things and resolve problems by considering what the other side's going to argue or what their position might be. And finally, just the expertise and the quality of the professors and the instructors has been incredible. I'm still kind of geeked out over I think it was crisis management, where we had the lead attorney for the hotel and the property in the Vegas shooting, and having him come through and walk us through the steps he took to manage that crisis. Like I said, I'm still kind of geeking out over that session. So those are just a few things.
Yeah, I would echo Jennifer's thoughts. I think having the variety of different types of folks in the group did give you the ability to kind of, again, better identify those win-win situations. I better understand how firms are calculating profitability and how that plays into what I'm needing to do on my end. But on the personal side, I definitely I graduated a year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever it was, still definitely talk to people regularly from the program and reach out, on a personal level, but also kind of on a benchmarking level. Hey, is there someone at your company that does this that you could introduce me to, and that kind of thing, as well as, when I ran into kind of a new situation that I had never dealt with, and I thought this could be a project management solution. Kyle was nice enough to connect me to someone who had spoken to our class. And so it does give you sort of that lifelong ability to go back and find the experts again. So that was much appreciated.
I have also reached back out to my professors, multiple professors. I reached out in the beginning for, to Chris Schultz for assistance with my e-discovery project. My grades are in, Kyle, so I don't have to say this to sound like I'm being obsequious, but I was really impressed with the faculty. I really was. Top-notch faculty, learned so much, and then learned a lot from the friends that I made in the program. And so for me, if you're thinking about the program, your people are out there, right? There are people out there that are struggling with the same kind of questions in this that you are. And, I really appreciated getting to know Jennifer and my other classmates and finding out that Jennifer in Oklahoma was going through the same types of questions and corporate counsel struggles was good to know.
Good. Guys, I really thank y'all for, taking the time out of your day. And as you all know, you're certainly welcome to come back and join us anytime you want on your on-campus sessions or otherwise. And I appreciate you sharing, appreciate you sharing your experience and some of the ways that you've taken some of the things and you are using them. And certainly on behalf of our entire faculty, I'm proud of each of you for, the things that you're doing and the way you're changing the way that litigation is managed to make it more effective and more efficient. That means a great deal to me. Thank y'all very much. And thank you everybody for attending. And next month, there'll be another webinar. I'm not exactly sure what day it is, but be on the lookout for the LinkedIn posting for next month's webinar. Thank y'all very much. And y'all have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everybody.